Make sure I'm on the right one. All right. All right, guys. Happy Thursday. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. I think this is it's probably week 6, I want to say. Week 6 of our series. See you at the closing table, contract to closing table mastery for Florida Realtors. We are walking our way through title insurance and the closing process for realtors, right? Nothing is better than hearing closed and funded, right? So we start at the top and we're talking about what does it take. This is when it gets a little complicated, a little bit more complicated. And I know, and I'm going to tell you the honest truth. It gets complicated for a number of reasons. One, you're unfamiliar with what's going on at this time. Like you generally understand it, but you don't really know all the nuances. This can be closing, title insurance and closing is technical, just like your contract and negotiation process. And it's technical information that you don't know, right? Substantive, systematically, how does it work? And then how do I apply this in my transaction? So over the course of these 12 weeks, it is the hope that you will walk away from these 12 weeks saying, I absolutely am clear on what's happening. Not that I'm a closing agent now all of a sudden, right? I didn't mysteriously become a closing agent, but I know the questions to ask, right? I know the questions to ask. I'm confident about asking those questions, and I'm not just gonna say, well, we'll just let title figure that out and they'll send me an email or just hope it never comes up, right? Know what questions to ask because again, you know what we always say, you're increasing your competency, right? And competency increases confidence, and then confidence increases closings. Period. It's undefeated. The more you know, the more you grow. The more you learn, the more you earn. The more you learn, the more you earn. Undoubtedly, the more you learn, the more you earn. So when we come together on Thursdays, make sure that you leave with something that is going to increase your earning ability. I promise you, I've done my part to present you with something, right? I'll do my part. So with that being said, for those who I have not had an opportunity to meet before, because we do always have at least one new face in the room, I would like to virtually introduce myself and say welcome to Purchase Ready Lab, our Thursday live training for Florida Realtors, where we talk all things transaction mastery, right? So where we go over what it takes to increase your competence and your confidence in your transactions. Hello, everybody coming in the room. I love to see. And just as an aside, I always say this. I love when folks enter the room and say hello, like just as if you were in person. I don't always do it just because I just kind of get busy, but you know, it's mea culpa. It is the best thing for me. I just feel like it's just chef kiss for folks to say hello. So hello, hello, hello to everyone coming in the room. um, and so with that being said, hello. My name is Ray Cole Jackson. I'm a South Florida real estate attorney. A little bit about me personally for those who have not had a chance to. This is your first time in the lab, and that's our first time virtually meeting. A little bit about me personally. I am originally from South Florida, right? So I attended the University of Florida for undergrad. Go Gators. I attended law school in California at Santa Clara University School of Law, where I was the founder of the Real Estate Law Society. So, I mean, I just always enjoyed real estate. Hey, Luckner, I've always enjoyed real estate. And came back home to Miami, got my LLM in real property development. That's for an LLM, for those of you, if you see those initials on an attorney's name, that's where an attorney has gone to another level of training and to specialize in an area of law, right? So I went and got a specialization in real estate, real property development specifically. So as we say, dirt to disposition and management. So from land use to how do we get this land approved to build, to disposition if we're going to sell it, and management if we're going to hold on to it. So that was a very good time at UM. So I always say go Canes, secondarily. I am a licensed Florida Realtor and also a licensed loan officer. So all things real estate when we come in this room, right? There's nothing that, no issues that you guys can come against that I have not had an opportunity to address at some point. Hello. With this quarter being focused on title insurance and the closing process, It is powered by Title Experts, our title insurance and settlement services firm. We close all of Florida. Just for my information, I've used to do this before. Drop in the chat for me. Where are you guys located? I know we got some Port St. Lucie. I know we got a lot of Broward. I know we have Palm Beach. I know we have Dade. Do we have any Jacksonville? I think I know we got a Jacksonville. What's her name is from Jacksonville? Jaquel is from Jacksonville, I believe. Parkland, Vero Beach, Palm Beach. Where everybody coming from? Broward. Yeah, I think we have she repping New York. Wait, did New York win the other night? They did. Westlake. Yeah, New York came back from being down by what, 24 or something like that? Tamarack. Okay, Broward. Most of us are South Florida. Anybody in Orlando? Okay. Let me see. So in any event, all of Florida, Boynton, of course, Dallas and Boynton. So all of Florida. If you have not had a chance to Lake Worth, love it, love it. I'm in Orlando, Daytona area. Okay, look at that, stretching out, stretching out. And there's Jaquel, I believe, is in Jacksonville. So with that being said, we service all of Florida. So of course our corporate office is in Palm Beach, right across from the board. But for those who we have not had an opportunity to work with, new contracts, you can either send us to contracts or closings at titleexperts.com. Call us at 561-510-2294. All right. All right. So, with that being said, where have we been? Where have we been over these past? We're actually on our seventh week. Seventh week closing cost breakdown, breaking down and explaining every dollar, right? And so you'll see that we've gone all the way from introduction to title to intake to reviewing the different searches. All the way now we're getting to money, right? Because I told you guys in the introduction that title and escrow has two main priorities, right? Title, issue clear title, escrow, manage the money, right? Make sure that the dollars are calculated appropriately. So now in this second part of our quarter of mastering the contract close process, we're going to look at the dollars, right? So today we're starting to look at closing costs. And it's important that you guys understand closing costs. It's important that you understand them, what they represent, how they're calculated, because these are the costs that are going to be on your settlement statement. And you're a realtor. And even though you're not a closing agent, you should be able to review a settlement statement and say, my buyer shouldn't be paying for the lien search on this one. Or my seller shouldn't be paying for the owner's policy on this one. But if you've not learned the different closing costs and who pays for what and where you should see it allocated on the settlement statement, then that could be a very costly mistake. And God forbid your client notices it and you don't. That's not good. All right. All right. So today's topic specifically, decoding paragraph 9. We are in paragraph 9. The closing costs are discussed in paragraph 9. The various closing costs and who is responsible for those closing costs is in paragraph 9. Of course, we're reviewing the as-is contract because that's what's most customarily used in our transactions currently, right? All right. So, as we always do, let's grab the handout, labhandout.com, or use the QR code to grab your handout. Grab your handout. All right. Labhandout.com. Scan the QR code. All right. All right. So, two objectives today, because paragraph 9 hits on two items that you should be concerned about. There's a third in the middle, but for the purposes of cost, it's just two. It's 9A, 9B, and 9C. Paragraph 9A, paragraph 9B, and paragraph 9C. Paragraphs 9A and B lay out the closing costs. They lay out the closing costs. Paragraph 9C is where we determine who's responsible for particular closing costs, specifically those associated with title insurance and the title searches. That's what we're covering today. understanding what the closing costs are, and then understanding who is responsible for the closing costs. So, paragraph 9A and B is what you're seeing, right? In your handout is a full contract. You're going to look at paragraph 9A, B, and C. So just for the purposes of our conversation today, we screenshotted paragraph 9A and B, and then paragraph 9C. We're going to start with paragraph 9A and B, and we're going to look at the different closing costs. We're going to go line by line, and then we are going to be clear on who's responsible for the particular closing cost. All right? All right. So when you look at paragraph 9A and B, you do see some duplication of some closing costs. You see some duplication of costs because the duplicative costs are dependent upon which paragraph you select in paragraph 9A, I'm sorry, 9C1, 9C2, or 9C3 further in paragraph 9. But with that being said, this looks like a lot. This looks like a lot of information because again, this is duplicated, this is duplicated. Um, and some of these other items are duplicated, right? Municipal lien search. All it really is this. Like all of that language you're seeing are these specific closing costs. So we're going to go over them line by line so that you understand what they are. So seller's responsibilities. This is 9CA. What you see here as seller's responsibility is essentially what's under 9A. What you see under buyer's responsibilities is what you essentially see under paragraph 9B. So where it says deed and documentary stamps, deed, documentary stamp, taxes, and surtax. When the deed is recorded, there is a charge on that deed based upon the purchase price or what we call consideration. The clerk is going to charge for recording that deed. It's going to be a tax on recording that deed. We call that doc stamps or transfer taxes. Title search. There's a cost for ordering the title search that runs about $125 to $150, right? We talked about that. The municipal lien search. The municipal lien search is different from the title commitment. The title commitment is created after using the title search. The municipal lien search we talked about 2 weeks ago, that is utilized to determine any unrecorded municipal liens. So that is where we determine water bills. That's not recorded against the property as yet. One thing you should know that the items that are listed on the municipal lien search, they could eventually become recorded liens on the property, but they're not liens just yet. Anything that is a recorded lien on the property, it's going to come up on the title search, right? Remember we talked about with the lien search, because items on the lien search are not title issues, they're not reflected on the title commitment, they're not going to be resolved by the title agent. Unless in your contract you have what? Seller will be responsible for clearing out all unrecorded. The reason why we say unrecorded means it's probably going to come up on the lien search because it's not on the title search. Municipal lien search is unrecorded. Now, it can include some recorded items, but it is always going to include unrecorded items that are not reflected in the title search. So remember, in your additional terms section, you say seller will be responsible for closing out all unrecorded code violations, unresolved permits prior to closing at seller's expense. Remember those 4 elements. That's your municipal lien search. On the municipal lien search, again, just to be clear, it's going to be taxes that are unpaid. That's also going to come up on your title commitment. It's going to be a water bill. That's not going to come up on your title commitment unless there's a lien. And generally, a water lien is going to be for a prior owner per se, or if it's a current owner, it's probably a vacant property because generally they're just going to shut the water off, right? You're not going to have a water lien in the water. You still have service to the property on that same account. You're going to see, again, unresolved permits and unrecorded code violations. So open permits, expired permits are going to come up on the lien search. The cost of the lien search depends upon the municipality. This cost is what we consider a pass-through. So on the settlement statement, it's going to be whatever the municipality charges for that lien search. 250, 279, 197. We talked about that. HOA estoppel fees. An estoppel is a ledger essentially that is ordered from the association that is going to advise, generally it's going to let us know what the balance of any accounts on the property that are due, whether or not the buyer must be approved to move into the community, what's the status of that approval, are there any violations against the property. Remember we talked about that. Maybe that was the last session. We've done so many, I don't even have them in order in my head anymore. But we discussed the HOA estoppel in the prior session. The cost for that estoppel is customarily a seller's cost. Seller's attorney. If the seller hires an attorney to represent them in the closing, then the seller, of course, is responsible for that fee. As is maintenance escrow. Now I'm going to go back here so you guys can see this language because you probably never paid attention to it. So I want you to see the language specifically. In the event the property is not kept in its as-is condition, the pool is now black instead of blue. The grass is now, or the pool is now green instead of blue, and the grass is black instead of green. There is a provision, and it's here, where if the buyer wants to proceed to closing, let's say, for example, they're financing their purchase and their rate lock is going to expire and they don't have time to allow the seller to repair or remediate the pool, remediate the grass. This is a mechanism that allows for an estimated cost, the cost of 125% of the estimated cost to get the property back in that condition can be held at closing. That's what your as-is maintenance requirement is. And so that will allow the parties to close. That's not a title issue. That's a condition issue that the buyer, again, it's best for them to go ahead and close so they don't miss their rate lock doesn't expire. But we've held money back, right? And the seller is still going to do their due diligence and perform whatever tasks are necessary to remediate the pool, repair the grass, but we need to close. And we also want to make sure that in the event that they don't do it the right way, we have funds available in escrow, right? So that is your as-is maintenance fees, right? And then FIRPTA withholding. FIRPTA, FIRPTA, stands for Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act. This is a withholding for sellers who are deemed foreign. As a general matter, and it can get a little bit more complicated than this, but as a general matter, as a realtor, what you need to know is a seller is deemed foreign if they do not have a U.S. Social Security number or if it's an entity, an EIN number. They're deemed foreign, and there's a requirement for at least, on average, 15% of the purchase price to be withheld at closing and remitted, meaning deposited to the IRS. There's documentation that's required to do that. There's a timing requirement to do that. It is additional task. And so for that reason, that cost is to the seller. That's a seller's expense. On the buyer side, paragraph 9B, taxes and recording fees on notes and mortgages. There's a tax on the document based upon the cost, but then there's also the clerk also charges for the pages. There's going to be a tax on the mortgage, just like the deed. So if we have a purchase price of $1 million, the clerk is going to tax that deed at $1 million. They're going to tax the mortgage at $500,000. The buyer's going to pay taxes on the mortgage. Then the buyer's going to pay the cost to record the pages of the deed. I don't know why that's the case, but that's what it is. Like the seller's paying the taxes on it, but the buyer's paying for the pages. The buyer's also paying for the pages of the mortgage. With those pages is also, you're going to see an electronic recording fee. because in most counties, these documents are recorded electronically. Most closing agents use Simplifile. Um, there's some other random electronic filing platforms, but most use Simplifile. So you're going to see Simplifile on the settlement statement. This is what they are charging for. They're charging the fee that electronic platform charges to record the document. So you're going to see taxes, you're going to see pages, and then you're going to see a platform fee for recording. Survey and elevation certificate. We talked about the survey. We talked about the elevation certificate. We know that the survey is what's utilized to determine, to confirm that the property sits within its boundary lines. The elevation certificate talks about flood zone. The cost of that is a buyer's expense. If the transaction is financed, most lenders are going to require a survey and elevation certificate. If it's a cash transaction, the buyer can determine, they can decide that they don't want a survey, they don't want an elevation certificate. Well, their title insurance policy is going to exclude coverage for issues that a survey would identify. However, they have that right. But for the purposes of our conversation today, you know what that cost is for and what it generally costs. Generally, it costs now, the survey cost ranges from about $395 up, and the cost increases based upon the size of the property. So when you get into 2 and 3 and 4 acres, you're looking at a couple $1,000s easily. Okay. HOA application and transfer fees. So the seller pays for the estoppel itself. They pay for the document that lays out cost, requirements, violation statuses. But the cost to apply to the association is paid by the buyer. The cost to transfer the account with the association from the seller to the buyer pays for that. You'll see that as a line item. It'll be a line item on the estoppel, and then it'll be a line item on the closing statement. Loan and appraisal expenses. Pretty self-explanatory. So you're going to see what the appraisal costs, you're going to see discount points, you're going to see impounds and escrows, you're going to see credit check, verification of employment, verification of income, all those different lender fees, of course, they're going to be charged to the buyer. Buyer inspections, as you guys know, these are generally going to be, if it's like your property inspection, that's paid outside of closing. It's paid outside of closing, so you're not going to see that on the settlement statement. You could see a re-inspection fee if, for example, your closing is around the time of a hurricane and the lender is going to require that the property be re-inspected just to make sure it's still standing, right? Since this hurricane has passed. So that is when you would see potentially one of those costs. And then property and title insurance for the lender, the buyer is always going to pay the lender's policy. The owner's policy, it depends on which one you select in paragraph 9C1, 9C2, or 9C3. Okay, so let me swing back here so you can see what we're talking about. These items here, owner's policy charges, if 9C1 is selected, title search, if 9C3, municipal lien search, if 9C1, these three charges, owner's policy, title search, and lien search, well, who's responsible for it is going to be determined by which paragraph you choose in paragraph 9C. All the other fees stay the same. All the other fees are going to stay exactly with that party unless you negotiate otherwise, of course. You can negotiate where the buyer will pay for the estoppel. You can do that. But assuming you take the contract as it's drafted, all these other fees stay where they are. But those three, the title search, the lien search, and the owner's policy, is going to be determined by which paragraph you select, 9C1, 9C2, or 9C3. So the contract says that depending upon which paragraph is selected, 9C1, 9C2, or 9C3 is going to determine not just those three charges, but also, fourthly, who is going to select the closing agent, right? So there are four features of closing that is going to shift, I call it, based upon which of these paragraphs you select: 9C1, 9C2, or 9C3. Now, we're going to talk about those in more detail, but of course, the first question is that I often get is, how do we know which one to choose? It's customary. There is no requirement to choose one particular paragraph or the other. It's negotiated. Now, this graphic shows you what is customary in the state of Florida. This is what's customary. In counties that are title experts gold, as we describe it, those are counties where generally the buyer is going to select the closing agent. Those are your 9C2 counties. 9C2. In counties that are white, those are your 9C1 counties. Those are counties where the seller generally selects the closing agent, is going to pay for the owner's policy, going to pay for the title search and the lien search. All four are with the seller. The counties that are gray, that is your Miami-Dade Broward provision. And that is where the buyer is going to pay the cost of the owner's policy. The seller's going to pay for the searches. That's what I call split the baby. If you ever heard me train on this before, I call it split the baby, right? So 9C1, 9C2, and 9C3. Just as a reminder, for those who did not have a chance to attend the title commitment or the overview of title insurance training, when we close, there's two policies that are issued at closing, assuming it's a finance transaction. There's going to be a policy issued to the buyer, the owner's policy, which can be a little bit confusing because I know you're probably thinking the owner, because you're at closing, you're thinking the owner is the seller. Well, it's the future owner. So we should say future owner's policy, right? Because that's your buyer. And then the lender's policy, which is the lender. They both get insurance policies at closing. The future owner's policy is going to be for the purchase price. The lender's policy, future lender's policy, is going to be for the loan amount, right? So that's just a recap there. And you know that we're responsible for making sure that we clear title defects. Both the owner and the lender, they get a policy as far as what's cleared. The only difference is the amount. Okay? So let's look at 9C1. Seller pays title. Everything's on the seller side. All four are on the seller side. The seller's going to designate the closing agent. They're going to pay for the owner's policy and the searches. Everything is on the seller side. So this scale is a pictorial for you of where the four responsibilities are. Now, still on the buyer side is their policy, is the lender's policy and the endorsements. I taught you guys about endorsements. Endorsements are an additional coverage on the policy for a specific matter. So an additional coverage for the survey. We have surveyed the property. We know that it sits within its boundary lines. An additional coverage for the association, right? Because we have received an estoppel from the association. You will have no issues from the association. So generally, in South Florida, our lenders' policies are going to have about 3 endorsements. We have survey, association, and then environmental. There's no environmental issues with this property. All right. For clarity, seller pay does not mean the seller is going to pay all closing costs. Remember, estoppel is still with them, right? They're still going to pay for the taxes to record the deed. They're still going to pay for FERPTA withholding fees if that's applicable. Everything else still stays with them, except these 4 items are also with the seller if we select 9C1. If we select 9C2, then the buyer is going to control who pays. They're going to designate the closing agent. They're going to pay for the owner's policy. And of course, they're also going to pay for the lender's policy. Everything is on the buyer side. Now, this option, it results in the highest title cost burden for the buyer. Because the other thing folks ask, well, how do we decide? It's negotiable. You have two things that you're looking at when you decide 9C1, 9C2, or 9C3. Number one, control. How sensitive is this transaction that I want to make sure that this client does not have a bad experience? Or are there any nuances in this transaction that we cannot afford to just be in any work with an agent that I don't know how they do business? All right. I know that I have divorcing sellers, or I have sellers in dispute, and I want to make sure that I work with the closing agent that understands the legality of this situation. So I know that customarily in what is this? Collier County, the buyer selects the closing agent, but I cannot afford for this closing agent not to be familiar with the legalities around this action. So we have to go to, title experts. They have an attorney. We need to choose this particular closing agent, right? So you have that. And then the other thing is cost, right? So if your buyer really wants this property, it's in Palm Beach County. We know that customarily the seller pays for owner's policy and searches, but the buyer is willing to cover that cost just to give themselves a leg up in negotiating. They can do that. Again, it's a negotiated term. All right. And when we were, like, for example, in COVID, it was very customary for the buyer to select the closing agent and pay that cost, because that at least gave them that bit of leg up in the negotiation process. Okay. And then lastly, 9C3, Miami-Dade Broward provision. Now, I want to tell you guys something. Just because this is called Miami-Dade Broward split doesn't mean that it can only be used in Miami-Dade and Broward. It's just what it's called that because it came out of that region. It's very common in that region. But you can be in Palm Beach and say Miami-Dade Broward split. Seller's going to pay for the searches. Buyer's going to pay for their policy and select the closing agent. Right? So you want to know that you're looking for, when you select the Miami-Dade Broward split, the seller's going to pay for the searches. They're going to pay for the title search and the lien search. The buyer's still going to pay for the owner's policy and the lender's policy if there is a lender. Okay? So let's zoom out and see what this looks like from a 30,000 foot overview. 9C1, who's selecting the closing agent? Seller. Who's paying for the owner's policy? Seller. Who's paying for the searches? Seller. Everything's on the seller side. 9C1. All four on the seller side. 9C2. Who's selecting the closing agent? Buyer. Who's paying for the owner's policy? Buyer. Who's paying for the title search? Buyer. They're always paying for the lender's policy. 9C3. Who's selecting the closing agent? The buyer. Who's paying for the policy? The owner's policy? The buyer. Who's paying for the title search and the lien search? The seller. Who's paying for the lender's policy? Always the buyer. Zoom out. Those are the four. So when you see this little paragraph here can just look very confusing. If 9C, if what, you're like, what in the world? If what? And it's all over the place, right? If what? The only thing you need to remember is this if then is only next to 3 closing cost items. It's next to the owner's policy, it's next to the title search, and it's next to the lien search. And then when you get to 9C3, 9C1 and 2, it's also adding who's going to select the closing agent. Okay? I'm going to say this again. For those of this your first time looking at this paragraph, all of this if 9C verbiage, it is only next to 3 closing costs: the owner's policy, the title search, and the lien search. When you get to this paragraph, 9C1, 2, or 3, it's still indicating those 3 searches, but it also adds, oh, by the way, you're also going to designate the closing agent if you select 9C1 for the seller to pay for those 3. Oh, by the way, the buyer is also going to select the closing agent if you elect for the buyer to pay all those 3 costs, right? And then number 3, the buyer is going to select the closing agent, pay for the owner's policy. Searches are going to be paid for by the seller if you select 9C3. Clear as mud, or y'all got it? You got it, you got it, you got it. All right, so let's go back here. So I see your question, Sylvia. I'm gonna get to it just when we get to the Q&A. We're almost through this, and let me see, what's our time? Oh, we got good time. All right, let's go. Here's what you should know about costs. Doc stamps, this is the cost, essentially. There is some additional charge in Miami-Dade County. It's not common, so I wouldn't concern myself with it. Estoppel fees, we talked about that in the prior training. You should look at it a max $299 for the cost of the estoppel. But remember, a property can have multiple estoppels, number one. Number two, there could be an additional fee for expediting the estoppel delivery. And there can be an additional fee if that account is delinquent. So don't see the estoppel and say, why is this, $500? Ray Cole said it's going to charge $299. I said $299 max for one estoppel, not if it's expedited and not if the account is delinquent. All right. The title clearing, if there needs to be recorded a deed to a corrective deed, right? The title commitment said that there was a defective deed in the chain of title, and now we need to record a corrective deed. The seller is responsible for title clearing costs. Let's say there's a notice of commencement recorded against the property. You guys negotiated a new roof during the transaction. Now there needs to be a notice of termination recorded against the property. Seller's going to pay for that. Let's say the roof was done before it went on the market. Title commitment came back with the notice of commencement. Seller's going to pay for that. Let's say a death certificate needs to be recorded. Seller's going to pay for that. So anything needed to clear title, the seller is responsible for that cost. And then, of course, we know the seller's attorney's fee. Now, one thing I want to point out regarding seller's attorney's fee, because we have this that dynamic of seller rep, that is where the closing agent can select the closing agent. The buyer can select the closing agent, but the seller selects their own attorney to represent them in the closing. That's possible. One thing, that must be an attorney. It cannot be a non-attorney. You guys learned that in Florida, you can have non-attorney closing agents. A non-attorney can conduct the full closing. A non-attorney cannot provide seller representation. So if any of you in the past or you currently work with closing agents that you know are not attorneys, and you learn about this, oh, well, my seller can choose someone else to prepare their docs and clear their title and stuff. Yeah, they can, but there has to be an attorney. It cannot be a non-attorney closing agent. Okay? That's called practicing law without a license. Don't get your closing agents in trouble. All right. We talked about this, the as is, repair, maintenance, escrow that can be held. And we talked about FERPTA, the 15% withholding. Now, yes, it can be less than 15% based upon some circumstances, but as a general matter, it can be up to a 15% of the purchase price. Not their net proceeds, the purchase price. If your seller is on the market for $1 million, top line, $1 million, we're taking 15% of that $1 million and sending that to the IRS. Even though once they get down there, their payoff was $800,000, they had, had to pay commissions and all these other things, and their net was $50. We got to send 15%. We got to send 50% to the IRS, right? So just so you guys know that. And that's a separate conversation. When you're going through your listing presentations, you want to get ahead of that. If your seller is foreign, you want to get ahead of this FERPTA issue. But that's a whole nother training for another day. All right. All right. So buyer costs. Remember, they're paying taxes on the mortgage. So the contract says no. We generally do not record notes in Florida. So you're not going to see a cost for the note that the seller, I'm sorry, that the buyer has signed at closing. But it does state that if we were to record a note, then that would be the cost on it. Of course, the appraisal, you guys know, that cost is a pass through as well. Inspections and surveys, HOA transfer fees, and then their insurance, right? So those are the costs that you're seeing. Um, Again, just as a recap, 9C1, seller's going to choose. They're going to pay for the owner's policy premium and the title search. Everything is on the seller side. 9C2, buyer chooses. Everything's on the buyer side. Everything is on the buyer side. Owner's policy, title search, lien search. And then 9C3, right in the middle, split the baby. Buyer's paying for the owner's policy, lender's policy. Everybody's paying a settlement fee, obviously, the closing agent. And then also, and then with 9C3, the seller's going to pay for the lien searches. So, last thing. So, what are we doing? Which one should we choose? So when you're saying which does the buyer absolutely require control of the title process? Because obviously the buyer is the one that's making the offer. The buyer is the one that's drafting the initial offer to become a contract. And so you're filling in who's going to be the closing agent. You're the one that's selecting 9C1, 9C2, or 9C3. And now you know what's customary in the particular counties based upon the map that we have, right? And you have it in your handout. Does the buyer absolutely require control of the title process? If no, then 9C1 is customary in most states, most counties, I'm saying most states, in most counties in the state. So you would choose 9C1, right? Um, if it is necessary for them to control it, are you in Miami-Dade and Broward? If no, then you're probably looking at 9C2, which is just the outright buyer select, buyer pays, all three. If you are in Miami-Dade or Broward, then generally you're looking at 9C3, where the buyer is going to select the closing agent, pay for the policy, and the seller is going to pay for the searches. All right. So you want to make sure that you select the box that protects your client's non-negotiables, right? Do they want more control over the transaction for some reason, or do they want a cost savings, right? So that's what you should take a look at when you're making that determination. Any questions? Let's get to the questions in the chat, and then you guys can raise your hand if I was unclear on any of the costs. In Palm Beach, of the taxes, delinquent, and IMAP. Yes, Sylvie. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So Sylvie's question is 2023 taxes are delinquent, 24 and 25 are paid. If they are reflected as a lien on the property, when I close, will the closing agent make sure that the taxes are paid? Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Those taxes are going to come up on the title search and the lien search. Um, why is it legal and customary for the estoppel to say if any cost be paid by the seller becomes the responsibility of the buyer? If after closing an item bounces unpaid. Because, okay, so Sylvie's question is why is there language in the estoppel that if a seller's payment bounces, it becomes an obligation of the buyer? Because somebody's going to pay for it. And at this point, you're going to pay for it, buyer, right? You're now the owner of the unit. And so you're responsible for that assessment to the unit. So what they're saying is essentially it's not tagged to the seller per se, that or that particular person, that person is gone. It is tagged to the unit. And since you are now the now that you are the owner of the unit, then you're responsible for that. All right. All right. Perfect. Um, any other questions before we jump on that? No? All right. Guys, make sure that you are signed up for text message reminders. Sometimes emails can get buried. Sometimes they go into spam. My own emails go to spam. Riddle me that. So make sure that you are getting text reminders. Office hours has been great. You guys have been dropping in and asking some very, very, very good questions. They have also guided some of the content that we know that we need because you know how it is. What we think is common and we think everyone knows, they don't. And so they've been great. However, I want to say that tomorrow we will not have office hours, and Monday we will not have office hours. But we will be back at 10:30 on Tuesday. So no office hours tomorrow, no office hours on Monday for the Memorial Day holiday. You guys make sure that you go out and sell some homes, take a break, do whatever you need to do. You guys should have received an email. We are kicking off promoting your listings. Guys, we have a listing, and I see Candace and Peter have dropped in the chat. So let's go over these listings really quickly. We have Hansel is, I believe he's in the room. I saw him come in earlier. Hansel has an open house tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. You guys, I want to make sure that we support each other in this community. This is super important. This is not just about, let me give you guys a little hack right here. Okay. Okay. It's not all about what you know, it's who you know in everything that you do. I won't tell you how many times I have cases where there are attorneys that because I know the attorney, I'm like, oh, we'll be fine. It could be the nastiest case. I see the complaint, I see the attorney. Oh, wait, we good. I'll take it. I'll take it. So the warehouse, the open house is 132 Kingsway, Royal Palm Beach 33411. It's going to be tomorrow from 11 to 2. Those of you that come out, shake hands, meet each other. Hansel has some Starbucks gift cards. He'll have Starbucks gift cards. Yes, that he's gonna be sharing with you guys. So here's my charge to you guys. Y'all need to go meet because it is my desire that when a property comes on the market, that those of you who are in the community, you know that you know the business, you know that you know transactions, you know that the agents in this community know how to do good business, right? So I am going to encourage you guys, make sure, mark your calendars, time block. If you're in the area, it's from 11 to 2 to go out and meet each other, meet Hansel, walk through, and let's make sure that we start getting our listings sold. So the next thing is with regards to, let's see how much time I got. Okay, I got 8 minutes. I want to make sure, guys, that we're going to do a listing lab. We list properties to sell them. We don't list properties to take up space on the internet, right? We do not want to take up space on the internet. We list properties to sell them. And so one of the great conversations that have come out of office hours is the need for a listings lab where we go over how to effectively list a property for sale. And then when I say this, I'm not saying the generic trainings that you guys get. I'm talking about from experts in this space. I'm talking about from I'm gonna call it Nick Jackson, one who is a licensed appraiser, right? This is someone who I mentioned to you guys, those who were on the office hours today, that went up against an appraiser and won $25,000 put back on that purchase price. Let's let's sell, right? So I get that you're an appraiser, sir. I get it, but they're not perfect. There's a reason why you priced the property the way that you did. There's a reason why the property went under contract. And can there be outliers? Sure. But we don't want to let go of value where there is value. So we're going to start having some more conversations around that. Again, we're going to start having some more conversations around some due diligence so that there's not so many surprises once we go into contract. Like, all of a sudden, now, God, I didn't know that they had these, what do you call it? Solar panels that are 30 grand that they need to pay off, and now they're confused about what they need to do with it, right? So we're going to do that. So just make sure that we're going to start having that conversation. But tomorrow, make sure y'all come out and see or special assessment, right? Y'all go out and meet and mingle, meet each other, get each other's cell phone numbers so that when you see a listing, you can say, hey, lab mate. I got an offer coming to you on that listing. Peter has in the chat, Peter has a 2-2 on the marina. Oh, we talked about this one. I want to see this myself. A 2-2 condo in Jupiter on the marina, penthouse suite, vaulted ceilings. Candace gave me the whole tour virtually. I haven't even seen it yet, and I felt like I saw it. So his listing is in the chat. Candace placed her listing in the chat, a 3-2 move-in ready property, ready for a buyer. Joanne, you mentioned that you have a listing that you want to send in your information. You could send it to, just send it to me and I'll get it over to Rika. So Ray Cole, oh, she put it in there. So Ray Cole at purchaseready.com. Ray Cole Jackson at purchaseready.com. Send your listing, guys. Send your listings so we can share those out to each other. All right. All right. That's us. That's us. Are we able to advertise these? Absolutely. Absolutely. Any broker can advertise, right, Hansel? Right, Peter? Right, Candace? Any broker can advertise. They said yes.
Absolutely.
They said absolutely. Candace said absolutely. Have at
Absolutely.
it. Put your face all over it.
I don't know. I liked it. It makes sense.
What was that? Nothing.
Love it. All right,
This
guys.
is really exciting.
Mm,
I'm excited to do business
Problematic.
with my lab mates. I can't
Yeah.
wait not to have the title, the lab mates, like just all full circle. Maybe the Lindsay, you never know, but this is really exciting that we
Yeah, we
have this
go.
opportunity.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Um, send to me, please. Okay. Um, did you you're probably gonna have to. I know Hansel has a link with the photos. Hansel, how do you want to do that? Do you have that available right away? Or do you need that to be sent out? We got to put that together. This is all on the fly, guys. He definitely has a link that has all the photos. So I don't know if he has it available right now to drop in the chat, but we'll figure that part out and get it out. Oh, he said he could drop a link in the chat. Yeah, he's gonna try. I should listen when I say that. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. All right.
While I get that link ready.